Hello, and welcome to the Chicago Psychology Podcast with your hosts, Scott Hoy and Kyle Miller. On today's inaugural podcast, Kyle and I will be talking about just what you can expect from the show, who we hope to interview, the topics we hope to cover, and just what areas in psychology we find interesting. So whether you're at the gym, listening at work, on a train, in a plane, in a box with a fox, in a car, we hope you enjoy today's show. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Scott.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good. How are you?
I'm just ducky. It's just, maybe what we could do, since this is the inaugural session or episode of the podcast, we could introduce ourselves to each other so the audience can figure out who we are. I think we kind of know who we are, but I think it would be interesting for them to understand us a little bit more, where we come from. So, who are you?
I'm Kyle Miller, and I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor, and I work in the south suburbs of Chicago currently. How about you, Scott? Who are you?
Well, I'm Dr. Scott Hoy. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I work right here in downtown Chicago off of Michigan Avenue. And, I think that's me. That's
pretty clear.
Okay. All right. So enough with the formalities. I know that you have a different story. You weren't just you didn't just come out of the womb a fully licensed counselor. So if you did, that's pretty cool, and that would save you a lot of money with getting that degree. But if you can tell me, and therefore the audience, who you are based on maybe how what route you took to become this licensed professional counselor person that you are today.
Yeah, so I definitely had a roundabout way of becoming a counselor/therapist. I think I've told you in the past that when I was young, my family went to counseling, and I thought it was a really cool thing. And I was like, wow, this is really neat. I could see myself doing this. But at the time, I didn't know what a counselor was. I didn't know what a psychologist was. So I thought everyone was a psychiatrist. And I thought, you have to go to medical school, and I don't want to do all that. That's like 12 years of school after going to 12 years of school. So I decided, I'm just going to go out and make some money. So after a career in Motorola in the corporate world, I ended up moving into education and got a master's degree in teaching. Wow. And taught in Chicago public schools for 5 years. And then I ended up as a school counselor for a couple of years. And while I was doing the school counseling, I started doing private practice on the side. So I have a dual license. So I'm certified for school counseling and also clinical counseling.
Wow.
Through my program, yeah. So, and I found that when I was doing school counseling, I was thinking to myself, all I'm doing is preparing kids for college, which is great, but I found myself doing all my paperwork after work because I had a lot of students coming into my office wanting to talk about things that are going on with them. And I thought, I really like this a lot better than I do doing all the paperwork to help kids get to college. So I started more and more doing therapy as a side profession, and ended up working in a group practice, and then moved to another group practice. Mm-hmm. And now I've got my own practice in the south suburbs of Chicago.
Okay. Well, that's quite a route to get to where you're at right now. Do you still do anything with the teachers aspect of things, with the teaching and the counseling aspect of things?
So I actually, a lot of my clients, or some of my clients, are teachers. And so I really enjoy that. And I've done some workshops for teachers about mental health and also about helping, using some of those school counseling skills to help students prepare for their post-secondary endeavors.
Well, public servants, as far as public servants go, I think in Chicago, teachers are right up there with stress level alongside fire department and policemen. So,
oh my gosh,
yeah, very important.
I do agree. I definitely experienced that level of stress myself during my years in the classroom, and a little less in the counseling office, but it's an intense. Chicago Public Schools is an intense environment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I've worked with some teachers as well, and I do understand precisely what it is you're talking about and working with their levels of stress. So it's quite the job in Chicago Public Schools.
It certainly is. So how did you get here, Scott? What was the route you took?
Well, I came in through the front door of the building and took the elevator up, and I sat here at my that route. I got into psychology really much through a back end. My early years, when I was a teenager, I was in therapy, having lost a couple family members early on in life, and found it to be quite an interesting process, and I enjoyed it, even though I was a teenager in therapy. And I thought I might be a psychologist back when I was 17 to 19 years of age, and then just kind of turned it over because my trajectory at that time was to become an artist. So I was in school for fine art for a number of years and received a BFA in printmaking with basically enough credits for a minor in art history.
Wow, that's a very different career.
It was, yes, and along that time, I got a little bit tired of working by myself, wiping prints down to put through a press, and moved on into other areas of creative activity that meant interacting with people, like acting and doing music and whatnot. So I was in a couple bands, and I was acting and mostly doing office work to pay the rent. And after I moved to New York and working in the New York acting scene, I thought it would be of interest to learn hypnosis to work on character development in acting. So I took a couple weekend workshops that lay hypnotists would take, and I had the chutzpah enough to take a position as a sort of counselor, if you will, a lay hypnotist at a lay hypnotist clinic, a Positive Changes franchise in Brooklyn. I was in Bay Ridge for a number of months, and in Manhattan, and then after that, I'd opened up a private practice in Manhattan. So I've worked a number of years there. But in the meantime, I was mostly making money working as a paralegal, which is where I met my wife. And under my wife's direction, I went back to school to become first a counselor. So I have a freestanding master's in counseling psychology degree, and then went on to move to doctoral level training. So here I am now. I really enjoyed doing it back then. It was really kind of super duper brief therapy. Certainly not all about the relationship to the extent that counseling and psychotherapy can be in most cases. But I caught that bug, and so here I am today. It caught me by the nose and dragged me all the way to here on Michigan Avenue, up the elevator, and at this desk right now.
Well, I'm glad it did, because we're actually getting a chance to work together. Right?
Yeah.
That's great. So I'm interested. Can I ask you a question about I'm really interested about the hypnosis and acting.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find that it helped in your acting? And B, do you find yourself using any of the techniques that you used in acting in your current therapy practice?
Well, as you can see, my name is in lights, right, on this podcast, so I must be really using a lot of acting skills. I actually do think there's a lot of crossover between skills that are learned in therapy, active listening skills, having a kind of nose for therapy or nose for psychology of people, looking at subtle behaviors, body movements, ideomotor responses in people to see what the unconscious mind is doing. I think there's a lot of crossover between the two skills, and even a pretty well known in the hypnosis world, pretty well known trainer, Dr. Jeff Zeig, who is a student of Milton Erickson. He has a book called Psychaerobics. Psychaerobics, so mental aerobics, and it's basically utilizing acting techniques to teach therapists and coaches better active listening and watching skills and interaction skills.
Okay.
So kind of an improvisational therapy, if you will.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, so there is a lot of crossover, and I think that Dr. Zeig is correct in that, and even Bradford Keeney, who's a marriage and family therapist, systems therapist, he has written a book on improvisational therapy. I think there is a lot of crossover. As far as hypnosis and creating characters, yeah, I think there's a lot of inner work that actors do, especially if they're stuck with trying to develop a character, which is kind of trying to imagine being in the shoes of another person. And there's a lot of hypnotic techniques that work on that, stepping into another person's, like a role model's shoes and trying to think and act as if you have those skill sets that you might admire from another person. So there's a lot of crossover. Again,
really cool.
My name, well, yeah, I think so. My name is in light, so it's been very helpful.
Well, I'm glad that you've decided to come down to earth and join us lay people.
Oh, many people in my family and elsewhere agree. So, okay. What about yourself? I mean, you must have been interested in helping people on some level. You must have. You didn't just sit in that therapist's office and think, "Wow, I could make a pretty good living."
Yeah, and I don't think I explained that when I was telling you my story. When I worked at Motorola, I found myself doing a lot of volunteer work, and all of it was involved in like either kind of mentoring or coaching other people. I'm also a big brother in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program,
awesome.
And I still have my little brother now, and he's 31 years old, and so we're still friends. We still hang out. And there was a point when I was working at Motorola where a new CEO came in, and he decided that he's every year going to cut the bottom 10% of every department.
Well, that's considerate. Very considerate. Yeah.
It was really, really nice. It was not stressful at all. And I was, at the time he came in, I was the newest in my department. And so I was automatically in the bottom 10%. Now, my manager at the time she fought for me and, kept me on when they were doing layoffs. But I found myself looking for jobs all in the helping profession because I thought I was going to be laid off.
Okay.
Yeah. So I ended up, going into an alternative route to certification for teaching. And because my therapist at the time said, well, teachers are counselors and parents and all that good stuff too. So I took that route And I found myself when I was in the classroom, I did a lot of circles where we would talk about things. I worked in challenging areas of Chicago. I was in Roseland, Inglewood, and Douglas Park on the west side. And
Wow.
I had a lot of conversations with kids. You know, in my homeroom, we would have conversations about life, and I would allow them to talk about things that they didn't have a voice for elsewhere. And I found, you know, I really like this a lot better than the content I'm teaching, you know? So,
Well, you know what? I think that the process of doing therapy or counseling or running groups like that, you're helping people learn how to think in a lot of ways. So it really is the job of a teacher to do that rather than just be a teacher. And I think that you felt your calling because of the experience and seeing that immediate feedback, the light bulbs going off in the kids' heads, so to speak.
absolutely. And I also saw when they were able to express what was going on with them, some of the behaviors that we struggled with in classrooms dissipated. So once they felt heard and felt acknowledged, there was a shift in their behavior, and I know that partially that was because they felt connected to me. So I wanted more of that.
Okay.
So that's why I moved into doing part-time therapy on the side, and then eventually moved full-time.
Excellent. Do you feel like you're getting more of that now?
Oh, absolutely. I love my work.
Awesome.
It's incredible. I tell my wife almost every day that I come home, I'm like, I'm good at my job and I like it.
I have to say, I love my job as well. Having moved into it kind of like in a circuitous or meandering route, I still feel like I'm in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing.
Yeah. And I would think that both of us, you know, there's not much similarity to our backstories, but we both came to this a little bit later. And I think we bring a lot of experiences to this that, you know, that give us a fuller perspective when we're working with people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, both of us came into this and are basically in midlife, right? And I think a lot of therapists do. And I think intuitively I knew as a 19-year-old going into therapy as a practitioner was probably not going to be very helpful. You know, I think that intuitively I knew that there needed to be some distance between the growing up years and when you start to help other people kind of grow up on some level.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that I'm probably best suited for this field at this point in my life. I can't imagine 25-year-old me doing this work. I don't think I would have been very good at it. I was a very different person.
Yeah, that's very correct. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. So what got you interested in podcasting?
Well, as you can see, others at home can't see on this call, but I have a face for radio.
I'll join you in that one.
So I had some interest in doing this for some time. Some of my favorite time uses these days at the gym or elsewhere, listening to podcasts. Also, I think it's kind of an extension or an outreach of what I do as a therapist. That I think it is a kind of an outreach. I see the podcast as being potentially a way to demystify psychotherapy, to demystify mental health issues, to help people become more involved in their mental health, and hopefully to showcase other practices, other practitioners, trainers who would be of service speaking on the podcast to the community here in Chicago and outside of Chicago, because potentially people could be listening to this in Mozambique or in Trinidad or in Paris. So Podcast,
awesome.
yes, yeah. Well, hopefully, yeah. But podcasting, right. I think, is one of those things where you can be a resource for people. And in my practice over the years, whether I've been in a hospital or in private practice or group practice or anywhere, a lot of people just don't know where to turn to find the services that are out there. And there are many services available, both free for the community and for people who have insurance.
That's great. I totally agree with it. I think it's really important that we do have ways to advocate for what we do and advocate for people getting those resources, because they are definitely out there. It's just that they don't get promoted very well, I don't think, in mental health.
No.
Yeah. So I actually have always had a love of broadcasting. I went in the early 90s. I went to broadcasting school for a year or two.
Wow.
And if I do say so myself, I was one of the top students in my class. There was about 20 of us, and they called 4 of us in, and they say, "We think you could make it." And then after that, they told us, "But this is a really tough field, and you're going to start out making $5 an hour, and you're going to get fired a lot." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not really interested in that. I'm making over $7 an hour working in a warehouse." And, so I was looking for some stability. Mm-hmm. So I never really did follow it. And I've always wanted to do this on some level. And so when you and I started talking about this, I got really excited. I'm like, oh, I get to buy a microphone and I'm going to go around and talk to people. And I'm really excited about that. But it's also a way for me, find out more about what is going on out there in terms of mental health, and understand more about other people's perspective. Mm-hmm. And get to hear their stories. I got to tell you, you and I haven't really talked that deeply about why we're in this profession, and I loved hearing your story, and I can't wait to hear other people's. So I'm really excited about all of that. And plus, I have a face for radio too, so it's better that than a YouTube channel, right?
Well, maybe we can. Well, maybe we shouldn't do that. Okay.
Yeah. We'll see. Once.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was going to say one step at a time.
One step at a time. That's right. Well, are there any particular areas that you're interested in pursuing as far as like interviews or showcasing on the podcast?
Yeah. So I'm really interested in trauma-informed therapy and understanding more about first responders and veterans services.
Yeah.
My focus areas in my therapy are men's issues and relationships, and then I also have a lot of training in trauma and attachment. So I'm really excited about digging into that, and we've got interviews lined up with Chicago Fire Department, their EAP program. Hopefully will be coming on. We're going to be talking to some other agencies about the supports that they're offering out in the community as well. And so I can't wait to, go into Chicago, talk to people in the south suburbs, go out into the west suburbs and we can talk to people from around the world. Right, that's what's so great about this modality.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We can definitely focus on Chicago itself, but people from all over the world could potentially be speaking with us. So, for instance, I have some interviews lined up with people I have presented keynotes at a conference in India, and we're also looking at speaking with an author about Wolverine, the comic book character, in light of psychology, and trauma and victimization. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think that having a very wide net, but focusing on the issues that pertain mostly to Chicago is pretty important. So I think I really invite the opportunity to learn more things here. And I'm hoping that what we learn here speaking to people will also be of use to people who are working on their own psychological issues, perhaps, or people who are just curious about what psychotherapists, psychologists, counselors, social workers do, or any other aspect of the human condition.
Yeah, and we've also talked about going to like community organizations that are out there promoting mental health, promoting just wellness in general. And I think it'll be a great resource, like you said, giving these people a voice so that, everyone knows that all of this is out there, which is so important.
Yeah, because every time we interview someone, we can, in the show notes, have a backlink to their website or to their resource site. And we can certainly develop the podcast website, www.chicagopsychologypodcast.com, and have that have a resource page available there, as well as some of the backlinks for the show notes. So I think that potentially it's basically like community service or outreach or advocacy within clinical practice. That's kind of what I look at it as.
Absolutely. I'm excited for this.
Me too.
Let's make it happen.
Okay.
All right. Well, then let's wrap up for today.
Okay. Ciao. This podcast is for entertainment and informative purposes only. If you need a mental health professional, please seek one out. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Tune in next time when Kyle and I will discuss demystifying mental health. All material copyright 2019, the Chicago Psychology Podcast. Music provided by the band Serenati.